While most people flee from erupting mountains that spew molten rock and toxic gases, others call these deadly peaks home, building their lives in the shadows of Earth's most violent geological forces. Across our planet, extraordinary communities have chosen to live alongside active volcanoes that could destroy everything they've built in minutes. Yet these brave souls have discovered that the very forces that threaten their existence also provide incredible opportunities that exist nowhere else on Earth. What we're about to explore together will challenge everything you think you know about acceptable levels of danger and human adaptability. Stay with me until the very end, because we're discovering 17 incredible communities that have turned Earth's most destructive forces into opportunities for prosperity, beauty, and ways of life that seem too dangerous to be real. Pahoa, located in Hawaii. Lava flows creep toward homes at the pace of cooling honey. Their 1,100-degree molten rock destroying everything in their path, while residents calmly pack belongings and prepare for evacuation from neighborhoods that might disappear overnight. Pahoa, located on Hawaii's Big Island, represents one of the most extreme examples of volcano living, where families build beautiful homes and businesses directly in the path of Kilauea's relentless lava flows that have been advancing toward the town for decades, with inevitable, unstoppable determination that follows no human schedule and respects no property boundaries. The residents of Pahoa have developed a unique relationship with volcanic destruction that seems impossible to outsiders unfamiliar with Hawaiian volcano culture and the geological realities of life on an active volcanic island. They understand that their homes, businesses, schools, and entire communities exist at the mercy of lava flows that emerge from underground fissures without warning. Yet they continue investing in their threatened neighborhoods because the volcanic soil, tropical climate, and natural beauty create living conditions that compensate for the constant danger of total destruction. Kilauea's 2018 eruption transformed the landscape around Pahoa in ways that demonstrate the awesome destructive power of volcanic forces, destroying over 700 homes, obliterating entire subdivisions, creating new land formations that added 875 acres to the Big Island, and reshaping coastlines while residents watched their neighborhoods disappear under molten rock that reached temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius. The lava flows moved slowly enough that most people could evacuate safely with their possessions, but fast enough that entire communities vanished within days of the eruption's peak intensity. Living with active lava flows requires practical adaptations that seem surreal to people. From geologically stable regions, including emergency evacuation plans that families practice regularly, like fire drills, property insurance policies that specifically exclude volcanic destruction because standard homeowners insurance won't cover acts of geological violence, and building techniques that accept the inevitability of eventual destruction while maximizing enjoyment of homes that might have severely limited lifespans. Many residents view their threatened properties as temporary gifts from Pele, the Hawaiian volcano goddess, rather than permanent investments. The psychological adaptation required for daily life in Pahoa includes developing comfort with uncertainty and impermanence that most people never need to cultivate, as residents must balance normal long-term planning with awareness that everything they build could be destroyed without warning when Kilauea enters active phases. Children grow up understanding that their homes, schools, and playgrounds exist temporarily, creating unique perspectives on material attachment and community resilience that shape their entire worldview and approach to life planning. The economic paradox of Pahoa demonstrates how volcanic threats can coexist with prosperity and community development. As the same geological forces that threaten destruction also create the fertile soil that supports thriving agriculture, geothermal energy that provides sustainable power generation, and spectacular natural beauty that attracts tourism, real estate investment, and residents seeking unique living experiences unavailable in safer but less dramatic locations. Property values remain surprisingly high despite the obvious risks, proving that some people value natural beauty and unique experiences more than security and predictability. Banos de Agua Santa, located in Ecuador. Tungurahua Volcano towers, directly above a thriving town where hot springs bubble from the earth. While volcanic ash chilly coats streets, buildings, and residents who have learned to live with an active stratovolcano that erupts frequently enough to keep emergency officials in a constant state of alert. Banos de Agua Santa, nestled in a valley 1,820 meters above sea level, represents one of South America's most remarkable examples of volcano tourism and residential development in locations that seismologists consider dangerously exposed to pyroclastic flows and volcanic mudslides that could eliminate the entire town within minutes. The town's economy depends entirely on the same volcanic forces that threaten its existence. As the geothermal activity that signals potential eruptions also creates the hot springs, mineral baths, and therapeutic treatments that attract tourists from around the world seeking natural healing and relaxation experiences unavailable in non-volcanic regions. The volcanic soil supports lush agriculture that produces tropical fruits, vegetables, and coffee that thrive in the mineral-rich earth created by centuries of volcanic ash deposits that continue accumulating with each eruption cycle. Tungurahua's 1999 to 2016 eruption cycle forced multiple evacuations of Banos, while demonstrating the unpredictable nature of volcanic activity that can shift from dormant to explosive within hours, sending clouds of superheated gas and rock fragments racing down mountainsides at speeds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour. During the most intense periods, residents abandoned their homes for months, while volcanic activity made normal life impossible and dangerous. Yet most returned as soon as authorities allowed, despite experiencing the terror and disruption of volcanic evacuation. The evacuation experience of 1999 transformed Banos from a quiet agricultural town into a highly prepared volcanic community where residents understand emergency procedures, maintain evacuation supplies, and participate in regular drills that ensure rapid community mobilization when volcanic activity increases. Children learn volcanic safety as part of their basic education, while adults develop expertise in reading volcanic warning signs and responding appropriately to changing geological conditions that could indicate approaching dangers. Despite the obvious dangers demonstrated during major eruption cycles, most evacuated residents returned to Banos as soon as authorities allowed, demonstrating the powerful attraction of volcanic living that combines natural beauty, economic opportunity, and community connections that outweigh safety concerns that would keep most people permanently relocated to safer regions. The town has actually grown in population since the major eruption cycle ended, with new residents attracted by the dramatic landscape, unique lifestyle opportunities, and affordable real estate in one of Ecuador's most naturally beautiful locations. Emergency preparedness in Banos includes early warning systems that monitor seismic activity and gas emissions, evacuation routes that provide multiple escape paths from the volcanic valley, and emergency shelters that can accommodate the entire population during extended evacuation periods. The sophisticated planning reflects lessons learned during previous evacuations, when inadequate preparation created unnecessary hardship and chaos, while ongoing drills ensure that all residents understand their roles in emergency procedures that could save thousands of lives. The cultural integration of volcanic threats into community life at Banos demonstrates remarkable human adaptability and risk tolerance. As residents celebrate local festivals, develop long-term business plans, and invest in property improvements while maintaining awareness that everything could change dramatically if Tungurahua enters another active eruption phase. This balance between acceptance and preparedness creates a unique community psychology that enables normal life under extraordinary circumstances that would create chronic stress and dysfunction in most populations. Goma, located in Congo. Mount Nyiragongo's lava lake glows red against the African night sky, while over 1 million people live within 20 kilometers of a volcano that contains one of the world's largest pools of molten rock, creating the most densely populated volcanic risk zone on Earth, where geological surveys predict inevitable future eruptions that could destroy the entire city. Goma, built directly on hardened lava flows from previous eruptions, represents humanity's most extreme example of large-scale urban development in an active volcanic zone where millions of people face geological threats that could create one of history's worst natural disasters. The 2002 eruption of Nyiragongo sent lava flows directly through Goma's city centre, destroying 40% of the urban area, including the airport runway, government buildings, and thousands of homes, while over 350,000 residents fled across international borders to escape molten rock that moved slowly enough for evacuation, but inexorably enough to demonstrate the futility of trying to stop or redirect volcanic forces through human intervention. The lava flows created new topography within the city, forcing reconstruction around solidified rock rivers that permanently altered neighborhood layouts and transportation networks, while providing stark reminders of volcanic power. Economic necessity drives much of Goma's population growth, despite the obvious volcanic risks that emergency officials regularly publicize. As the city serves as a crucial commercial center for Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo's mining industry, international aid operations, and cross-border trade with Rwanda that provides employment opportunities unavailable in safer but less economically developed regions. Many residents understand the dangers but lack alternatives that would provide similar income and lifestyle opportunities in less geologically active areas where employment prospects remain severely limited. Living conditions in Goma reflect the complex interplay between volcanic threats and urban poverty, as many residents cannot afford to relocate even when volcanic activity increases, and emergency officials recommend evacuation to safer areas outside the volcanic risk zone. The city's rapid population growth has outpaced infrastructure development, creating overcrowded neighborhoods built on unstable volcanic terrain, where emergency evacuation would be logistically challenging and economically devastating for families who would lose their homes, businesses, and community connections that provide essential social and economic support. Nyiragongo's persistent lava lake creates ongoing seismic activity that residents have learned to interpret as normal background conditions, requiring no special response. Yet volcanologists warn that major eruptions occur cyclically every few decades, and that Goma's current location virtually guarantees future destruction when volcanic activity intensifies beyond current levels. The psychological adaptation required to maintain normal life under such conditions demonstrates remarkable human resilience and the complex calculations people make when balancing risk against economic opportunity and community belonging. International aid organizations maintain permanent emergency response capabilities in Goma specifically because of the volcanic threats that could create humanitarian disasters requiring immediate international assistance. Yet the city continues growing as rural populations migrate toward urban economic opportunities, despite the geological dangers that aid workers and scientists regularly warn could eliminate the entire metropolitan area. This population growth creates an increasingly dangerous situation, where more people become exposed to volcanic risks, while emergency response capabilities struggle to keep pace with the expanding population living in harm's way. Urban planning in Goma attempts to balance development needs with volcanic risk reduction through building codes, evacuation route planning, and land use restrictions that discourage settlement in the most dangerous areas. Yet enforcement remains challenging due to poverty, political instability, and rapid population growth that creates pressure for development in any available space, regardless of geological safety considerations. Emergency planning includes evacuation procedures for over 1 million people. Yet the logistics of moving such populations across international borders during volcanic crises would challenge even the most advanced emergency management systems. Tanna, island villages, located in Vanuatu. Earth's most accessible active volcano creates a permanent fireworks display where families live just kilometers from a crater that explosively launches molten rock bombs hundreds of meters into the air every few minutes, their homes shaking with each eruption, while children grow up considering volcanic thunder normal background noise that provides comfort rather than fear. Mount Yasur on Tanna Island provides one of the world's most intimate examples of human volcano coexistence, where traditional Pacific Islander communities have developed cultural and practical adaptations to life beside a constantly active stratovolcano that has been erupting continuously for over 800 years. Mount Yasur erupts almost continuously, with strombolian explosions that launch glowing volcanic bombs and ash clouds visible from international shipping lanes. Yet the surrounding villages maintain traditional lifestyles that incorporate volcanic activity into daily routines and cultural practices that have developed over hundreds of generations of exposure to constant volcanic activity. Local communities view the volcano as a sacred ancestor whose voice provides guidance for important decisions and whose presence protects the island from external threats, including storms, disease, and human enemies. Traditional housing around Mount Yasur reflects architectural adaptations designed to survive ashfall, volcanic bombs, and the seismic activity that accompanies frequent eruptions. Yet these indigenous building techniques also incorporate materials and methods that work in harmony with the volcanic environment rather than attempting to resist forces that no human construction could withstand. Local builders use volcanic rock for foundations, palm fronds for roofing that can be quickly replaced after volcanic damage, and flexible construction techniques that allow structures to flex with seismic movement rather than breaking under geological stress. Agricultural systems on Tanna Island demonstrate how volcanic activity can enhance rather than threaten food production, as the fertile volcanic soil supports tropical crops that produce higher yields than agricultural areas in non-volcanic regions, while the mineral content of volcanic ash provides natural fertilization that eliminates the need for artificial soil amendments that most farming requires. Traditional farming techniques maximize these benefits while minimizing exposure to harmful volcanic gases and acidic rainfall that can damage crops and threaten human health during periods of increased volcanic activity. Cultural integration of volcanic activity into traditional Pacific Islander spiritual and social systems creates community resilience that allows normal life to continue, despite constant exposure to geological forces that would terrify most populations, as Mount Yasur eruptions are interpreted through traditional belief systems that provide meaning and context for experiences that might otherwise create chronic anxiety and disrupted social functioning. Community ceremonies and cultural practices actively incorporate volcanic phenomena as positive, rather than threatening forces that connect the community to ancestral spirits and natural powers. Traditional navigation and fishing around Tanna Island incorporate volcanic activity into weather prediction and seasonal planning, as local experts have learned to read volcanic behavior patterns that correlate with ocean conditions, wind patterns, and fish migration cycles that determine successful fishing and safe travel between islands. This traditional knowledge demonstrates sophisticated understanding of interconnected natural systems that modern science is only beginning to appreciate and document. Tourism development around Mount Yasur has created economic opportunities for local communities while also exposing them to external perspectives on volcanic risk that sometimes conflict with traditional cultural interpretations of volcanic activity, leading to complex negotiations between indigenous knowledge systems and international safety standards that don't always recognize the validity of traditional risk management practices developed through centuries of successful coexistence with active volcanism. La Fortuna, located in Costa Rica. Arenal Volcano's perfect cone rises above a town where residents became accustomed to nightly lava displays that lit up the sky for decades, creating one of the world's most spectacular examples of volcano tourism. Until the mountain suddenly went quiet in 2010, leaving thousands of people economically dependent on volcanic activity that simply stopped without warning. La Fortuna represents the economic complexity of volcano communities, where prosperity depends on geological forces that operate according to no human schedule or economic requirements, demonstrating how volcanic dormancy can be as economically devastating as volcanic destruction. During Arenal's active period from 1968 to 2010, La Fortuna developed into Central America's premier volcano tourism destination, offering visitors the unprecedented opportunity to witness active lava flows, explosive eruptions, and volcanic lightning from safe distances that provided spectacular viewing without exposing tourists to significant danger. Hotels, restaurants, tour operators, and local guides built thriving businesses around predictable volcanic activity that created reliable entertainment for international visitors seeking unique natural experiences that couldn't be replicated in theme parks or other artificial attractions. The economic transformation of La Fortuna during Arenal's active period demonstrates how volcanic threats can become economic assets when properly managed and marketed to tourists seeking adventure experiences and natural phenomena unavailable in geologically stable regions. Local residents developed expertise in volcano guiding, safety management, and hospitality services specifically designed to showcase volcanic activity, while maintaining acceptable risk levels for commercial operations and tourist safety that allowed the volcano tourism industry to operate for over 4 decades without major accidents. Arenal's unexpected transition to dormancy in 2010 created economic challenges for La Fortuna's tourism industry, while also eliminating the spectacular lava displays that had attracted visitors for over 4 decades, forcing businesses and residents to adapt to dramatically changed circumstances where the main attraction suddenly disappeared without indication of when or whether volcanic activity might resume. This transition illustrates the unpredictable nature of volcanic economics and the risks associated with building entire communities around geological phenomena that can change without warning. Local adaptations to arenal's dormancy include diversification into adventure tourism, cultural tourism, and ecotourism that highlight the region's natural beauty, wildlife, and outdoor recreation opportunities that don't depend on active volcanic displays, while residents maintain hope and preparation for eventual renewed volcanic activity that could restore their unique economic advantages. Many businesses have invested in activities like zip lining, wildlife viewing, whitewater rafting, and hot springs tourism that capitalize on the volcanic landscape without requiring active eruptions to provide visitor satisfaction. The psychological adaptation required for La Fortuna residents reflects the complex emotional relationship between communities and their volcanic neighbors. As many locals miss the spectacular lava displays and volcanic activity that defined their community identity and economic foundation for decades. This demonstrates how volcanic activity can become integral to community culture and identity, rather than simply being viewed as a geological threat or economic resource that exists independently of human emotional attachment and cultural meaning. Tourism infrastructure developed during arenal's active period continues serving visitors interested in volcanic landscapes, geological education, and natural history even without active eruptions, proving that volcanic tourism can survive periods of geological dormancy if communities adapt their marketing and visitor services to emphasize other aspects of volcanic environments. Educational programs about volcanic processes, geological formation, and ecological systems provide alternatives to lava viewing that maintain visitor interest while waiting for potential renewed volcanic activity. Kasatochi area, located in Alaska. Remote research stations and indigenous communities survive in one of Earth's most volcanically active regions, where 54 active volcanoes dot the Aleutian archipelago, creating a landscape where explosive eruptions can suddenly transform entire islands, while residents adapt to isolation, extreme weather, and geological violence that combines Arctic conditions with volcanic fury. The Kasatochi area represents humanity's most extreme example of volcanic living in polar conditions, where survival challenges multiply exponentially. The 2008 eruption of Kasatochi volcano completely transformed the island's landscape in a single day, destroying all vegetation and wildlife habitat while creating new topographical features and demonstrating the incredible power of explosive volcanism in a region where monitoring and emergency response capabilities are severely limited by remoteness and harsh weather conditions. The eruption provided scientists with unprecedented opportunities to study ecological recovery and volcanic impact in pristine environments. Living conditions in the Aleutian volcanic zone require adaptations to both Arctic climate extremes and volcanic threats that create unique survival challenges found nowhere else on Earth, as residents must simultaneously prepare for temperatures below -40 degrees Celsius, winds exceeding 150 kilometers per hour, and volcanic eruptions that can occur without warning at any time throughout the year. Traditional Aleut survival techniques incorporated volcanic activity into seasonal planning and resource management strategies. Research communities in the Kasatochi area demonstrate how scientific investigation can provide economic foundation for human settlement in otherwise uninhabitable conditions. As volcanic monitoring stations, geological research facilities, and environmental studies require permanent or semi-permanent human presence in locations where conventional economic activities would be impossible. These scientific settlements must maintain sophisticated emergency preparations for both volcanic and weather emergencies. Indigenous knowledge systems developed by Aleut communities include traditional understanding of volcanic cycles, weather patterns, and seasonal variations that enabled survival in the Aleutian environment for thousands of years before modern technology provided alternative survival strategies. Traditional hunting, fishing, and gathering techniques were specifically adapted to volcanic island environments, where eruptions periodically destroyed local ecosystems and required community mobility and resource flexibility. St. Pierre, located in Martinique. Ruins from the 1902 volcanic catastrophe that killed 30,000 people in minutes still mark the landscape where a new town has grown, despite sitting directly beneath the same Mount Pelée that created one of history's most devastating volcanic disasters, proving that humans will rebuild in the most dangerous locations if the land offers benefits that outweigh even catastrophic historical precedent. Modern St. Pierre represents humanity's most dramatic example of returning to rebuild after total volcanic destruction. The original destruction of St. Pierre by Mount Pelé's pyroclastic flows created a natural laboratory for studying explosive volcanism and urban vulnerability that continues providing scientific insights over a century later, while the ruins serve as a permanent reminder of volcanic destructive power that can eliminate entire cities within minutes, when eruptions generate superheated gas clouds that move faster than hurricane winds and incinerate everything in their path. Rebuilding St. Pierre in the same location as the destroyed city demonstrates remarkable human optimism and risk tolerance, as residents knowingly constructed homes, businesses, and community infrastructure in a zone that geological evidence proves will eventually experience similar volcanic destruction when Mount Pelée enters another explosive eruption cycle. Modern building codes and emergency planning attempt to reduce future casualties, but cannot eliminate the fundamental geological dangers. Tourism development at St. Pierre capitalizes on the site's tragic history and dramatic volcanic setting to attract visitors interested in natural disasters, archaeological sites, and volcanic phenomena, creating economic opportunities that depend on the same geological forces that threaten the community's existence. Museums, guided tours, and historical sites generate revenue while educating visitors about volcanic risks and the human consequences of living in volcanic hazard zones. Modern volcanic monitoring around Mount Pelée provides early warning capabilities that didn't exist during the 1902 eruption. Yet volcanologists acknowledge that pyroclastic flows can develop and move so quickly that evacuation time might be insufficient to prevent casualties if future eruptions follow similar patterns to the historical disaster. This creates ongoing tension between scientific warnings and community development in high-risk volcanic zones. Cultural memory of the 1902 disaster influences contemporary St. Pierre community psychology and risk perception in complex ways, as residents balance historical awareness of volcanic dangers against daily life requirements and economic opportunities that make continued residence attractive. Despite the obvious risks, educational programs and memorial sites maintain awareness of volcanic threats while supporting community resilience and emergency preparedness that could reduce future casualties. Rabaul, located in Papua New Guinea. Twin volcanic cones tower above a town built inside an active caldera where residents have experienced multiple devastating eruptions, yet continue rebuilding in the same dangerous location because the natural harbour, fertile soil, and strategic position provide advantages that outweigh the geological threats that have repeatedly destroyed their community. Rabaul represents one of the world's most persistent examples of humans rebuilding repeatedly in the same high-risk volcanic zone. The 1994 eruption of Tavurva and Vulcan volcanoes buried much of Rabaul under volcanic ash, while forcing mass evacuation of the urban population. Yet most residents returned to rebuild their homes and businesses in the same locations where previous eruptions had caused similar destruction throughout the town's history. The eruption demonstrated the ongoing volcanic activity within the Rabaul caldera that makes future eruptions inevitable rather than merely possible. Rabaul's strategic importance as a natural harbour and commercial centre drives continued development despite repeated volcanic destruction, as the same geological forces that create eruption hazards also formed the protected harbour that makes the location valuable for shipping, fishing and economic activities that provide livelihood opportunities unavailable in safer but less advantageously positioned locations. The caldera's geography creates unique economic and transportation advantages. Living with active volcanic cones within the city limits requires daily awareness of geological conditions and emergency preparedness that most urban populations never need to develop. As Rabaul residents regularly observe volcanic gas emissions, seismic activity, and other warning signs that could indicate approaching eruptions. Children grow up learning to distinguish between normal volcanic background activity and potentially dangerous changes in volcanic behavior. Cultural adaptation to repeated volcanic destruction has created community resilience and rebuilding expertise that enables rapid recovery from eruptions while maintaining social cohesion and economic functionality despite periodic catastrophic disruption. Local building techniques, emergency planning, and social support systems reflect generations of experience with volcanic disasters and community recovery that most populations never need to develop. Sakurajima towns, located in Japan. Volcanic ash falls like grey snow on a daily basis, while 600,000 people live within the blast radius of one of the world's most active volcanoes. Their children carrying umbrellas to school, not for rain, but to protect against volcanic debris that regularly showers neighborhoods surrounding Sakurajima's constantly erupting peak. These Japanese communities represent the ultimate adaptation to living with explosive volcanic activity that occurs thousands of times per year. Sakurajima erupts so frequently that local residents have developed daily routines and practical adaptations that incorporate volcanic ashfall, explosive sounds, and seismic activity into normal life patterns that continue despite geological conditions that would evacuate most other populations. Schools, businesses, and government services operate normally, while volcanic explosions rock the region multiple times per day, creating background noise and environmental conditions that visitors find alarming, but locals consider routine. Daily life adaptations around Sakurajima include specialized cleaning equipment for removing volcanic ash from vehicles, buildings, and personal property, protective gear for outdoor activities during heavy ashfall periods, and agricultural techniques that work with rather than against the constant deposition of volcanic material that can damage crops while simultaneously providing soil nutrients. Local innovations in ash management and volcanic debris removal demonstrate remarkable practical ingenuity. Economic benefits of living near Sakurajima include the fertile volcanic soil that supports highly productive agriculture, geothermal energy resources that provide heating and power generation, and tourism opportunities that attract visitors interested in observing active volcanism from relatively safe distances. The same geological forces that create daily inconveniences and safety concerns also generate economic advantages that support prosperous communities, despite ongoing volcanic activity. Emergency preparedness systems around Sakurajima include some of the world's most sophisticated volcanic monitoring and early warning capabilities. Yet the frequency of eruptions means that major emergency responses are reserved for unusually large or dangerous volcanic events, while routine explosive activity is managed through standard precautions and temporary protective measures, rather than evacuation procedures that would disrupt daily life. Mount Merapi villages, located in Indonesia. The Fire Mountain sends pyroclastic flows racing down its slopes, while over 500,000 people live within its danger zone. Their villages are arranged like stepping stones up the volcanic flanks, where families farm the fertile soil between eruptions that have claimed thousands of lives throughout Indonesian history. Mount Merapi's surrounding communities represent one of the world's most densely populated volcanic risk zones, where economic necessity and cultural tradition override safety considerations. Traditional Javanese villages around Mount Merapi maintain agricultural and social systems that have adapted to periodic volcanic destruction for over 1,000 years, incorporating eruption cycles into religious practices, agricultural calendars, and community planning that accepts volcanic devastation as a natural process requiring adaptation rather than avoidance. Local cultural traditions view Merapi as a spiritual entity requiring respect and offerings, rather than simply a geological threat. The 2010 eruption of Mount Merapi killed over 350 people, while displacing hundreds of thousands of residents who lost homes, agricultural land, and community infrastructure to pyroclastic flows that moved at speeds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour and temperatures above 1,000 degrees Celsius. Despite this recent devastation, most evacuated families returned to rebuild in the same dangerous locations where their ancestors had lived for generations. Economic dependence on volcanic soil drives continued settlement around Mount Merapi despite obvious risks, as the mineral-rich volcanic ash creates some of Indonesia's most productive agricultural land that supports intensive farming of rice, vegetables, and cash crops that provide essential income for rural families who lack economic alternatives in safer but less fertile regions. The volcanic soil's productivity makes relocation economically devastating for farming families. Traditional warning systems around Mount Merapi include interpretation of animal behavior, environmental changes, and spiritual indicators that complement modern scientific monitoring to provide early warning of increased volcanic activity. Yet many residents rely more heavily on traditional knowledge than official evacuation orders when deciding whether to flee approaching eruptions. This creates tension between indigenous risk assessment and government emergency management. Mount Mayon villages, located in Philippines. The world's most perfectly shaped volcanic cone rises above Filipino villages, where families have learned to read the mountain's moods through subtle changes in volcanic gas emissions, seismic tremors, and atmospheric conditions that warn of impending eruptions from a stratovolcano that has destroyed surrounding communities over 40 times in recorded history. Mount Mayon's surrounding settlements demonstrate remarkable persistence in rebuilding repeatedly in the same high-risk locations. Mayon's explosive eruptions create pyroclastic flows, lahar mudslides, and volcanic bombing that can destroy villages within minutes. Yet the surrounding agricultural communities continue farming the incredibly fertile volcanic slopes that produce some of the Philippines' highest crop yields. Despite the constant threat of volcanic destruction, the economic benefits of volcanic soil drive continued settlement in areas that geological surveys identify as extremely dangerous. Traditional Filipino agricultural techniques around Mount Mayon maximize volcanic soil productivity while attempting to minimize exposure to volcanic hazards through crop selection, planting schedules, and farming practices that work with volcanic cycles rather than ignoring them. Local farmers have developed expertise in reading volcanic warning signs and timing agricultural activities to avoid the most dangerous periods of volcanic activity. The 2018 eruption of Mount Mayon forced evacuation of over 80,000 people, while demonstrating the ongoing explosive potential that makes surrounding villages perpetually vulnerable to sudden destruction. Yet most evacuated residents returned to their homes and farms as soon as authorities allowed, proving that economic necessity and cultural attachment to place override safety considerations for most volcano-adjacent communities. Cultural and religious traditions around Mount Mayon incorporate volcanic activity into spiritual practices and community life in ways that provide psychological frameworks for coping with constant geological threats while maintaining normal social and economic functioning despite environmental conditions that would challenge most populations. Local festivals and religious observances acknowledge both the creative and destructive aspects of volcanic forces. Santorini, located in Greece. Whitewashed buildings perch on cliff edges above a flooded volcanic caldera, where one of history's most catastrophic eruptions created the myth of Atlantis. Yet modern Santorini hosts millions of tourists annually who come to witness the beauty created by geological destruction, while residents rebuild their lives on the rim of an active submarine volcano that could repeat its devastating Bronze Age performance. This Greek island represents the ultimate transformation of volcanic destruction into economic opportunity. The Minoan eruption that created Santorini's current landscape around 1600 BCE ranks among the most powerful volcanic events in human history, destroying advanced Bronze Age civilizations and potentially inspiring Plato's Atlantis legend. Yet the same geological catastrophe that eliminated entire cultures also created the dramatic cliffs, colored beaches, and unique topography that makes modern Santorini one of the world's most sought-after tourist destinations. Modern tourism development on Santorini capitalizes on volcanic scenery, while largely ignoring the ongoing geological risks associated with living on an active volcanic caldera, where future eruptions could reproduce the devastation that destroyed Minoan civilization, creating a psychological disconnect between the volcanic beauty that attracts visitors and the volcanic threats that make long-term residents geologically risky. Tourist marketing emphasizes beauty while minimizing risk awareness. Traditional Greek island architecture on Santorini incorporates building techniques adapted to seismic activity and volcanic ashfall that have enabled communities to survive numerous smaller eruptions and earthquakes throughout historical periods. Yet modern construction often prioritizes tourist amenities and scenic views over geological safety. Considerations that were crucial for earlier island residents who understood volcanic risks more intimately. Economic transformation of Santorini from subsistence agricultural communities to international tourism destination demonstrates how volcanic landscapes can become valuable commodities, while also increasing population exposure to geological risks. As tourism development attracts millions of annual visitors and thousands of permanent residents to locations where volcanic activity could create casualties on unprecedented scales. If major eruptions occur during peak tourism seasons. Mount Bromo region, located in Indonesia. Sunrise reveals an alien landscape where multiple volcanic cones rise from a vast sea of volcanic sand, their smoking craters creating an otherworldly environment where local Tengger communities maintain traditional Hindu ceremonies, while tourists flock to witness one of Indonesia's most spectacular examples of active volcanism in a densely populated agricultural region. The Mount Bromo area demonstrates how volcanic tourism and traditional culture can coexist in active volcanic landscapes. The Tengger caldera contains multiple active volcanic cones, including Mount Bromo, whose frequent eruptions create dramatic visual displays, while also producing ashfall and volcanic gases that affect local agricultural activities and require constant adaptation by farming communities, who have learned to work with rather than against ongoing volcanic activity. Traditional Tengger agricultural techniques incorporate volcanic cycles into planting and harvesting schedules. Traditional Tengger Hindu ceremonies at Mount Bromo include the annual Kasada festival, where community members throw offerings into the active volcanic crater to honor ancestors and seek protection from volcanic destruction, demonstrating cultural traditions that acknowledge both the creative and destructive aspects of volcanic forces, while maintaining spiritual connections to the geological landscape that defines their community identity and agricultural livelihood. Tourism development around Mount Bromo has created economic opportunities for local communities, while also bringing external perspectives on volcanic risk that sometimes conflict with traditional cultural approaches to living with active volcanism, leading to complex negotiations between indigenous knowledge systems and international safety standards that don't always recognize the validity of traditional risk management practices developed through generations of volcanic coexistence. Agricultural adaptation in the Mount Bromo region includes crop selection and farming techniques specifically designed to thrive in volcanic soil while surviving periodic ashfall and volcanic disturbances that can damage crops and disrupt agricultural schedules. Yet the exceptional fertility of volcanic soil compensates for these challenges by producing higher yields than non-volcanic agricultural areas, despite the ongoing geological risks. Fogo Island villages, located in Cape Verde. Africa's most active volcano rises from the Atlantic Ocean, while Cape Verdean communities live and farm inside the island's volcanic caldera. Their villages surrounded by recent lava flows and active volcanic cones that demonstrate the ongoing geological processes shaping this remote island nation. Fogo Island represents one of the most isolated examples of human adaptation to active island volcanism, where communities have developed unique survival strategies in extreme isolation. The 2014 to 2015 eruption of Fogo destroyed over 1,200 homes and forced evacuation of caldera communities, while demonstrating the ongoing volcanic activity that makes this Atlantic island one of the most geologically dynamic locations in Africa. Yet most evacuated residents return to rebuild their homes and agricultural operations in the same dangerous locations where volcanic activity had just destroyed their previous settlements and could easily repeat similar destruction. Traditional Cape Verdean agriculture inside Fogo's caldera maximizes the exceptional fertility of volcanic soil while adapting to the constant threat of volcanic destruction through crop selection, farming techniques, and community cooperation that enables rapid recovery from eruptions while maintaining food security for island populations, who depend on caldera agriculture for essential nutrition and economic survival in their isolated Atlantic location. Island isolation creates unique challenges for emergency response and evacuation during volcanic crises, as Fogo's remote location in the Atlantic Ocean means that emergency assistance and evacuation resources must travel hundreds of kilometers across open ocean to reach affected populations, making local preparedness and community resilience crucial for survival during volcanic emergencies when external help might be delayed or insufficient. Cultural identity on Fogo Island incorporates volcanic activity into music, art, and community traditions that celebrate the geological forces that created their island home, while acknowledging the ongoing risks associated with living in an active volcanic environment, creating cultural frameworks that enable psychological adaptation to constant geological threats, while maintaining optimism and community cohesion despite environmental conditions that would challenge most populations. Ternate, located in Indonesia. Spice traders built one of history's most valuable commercial empires on an island dominated by an active stratovolcano, whose fertile slopes produce the nutmeg and cloves that once made Ternate worth more than entire European kingdoms, yet whose explosive eruptions regularly destroyed the very plantations and trading facilities that generated enormous wealth for local sultans and international merchants. Ternate represents the ultimate example of volcanic economics, where geological danger and commercial opportunity intersect. Gamalama Volcano towers directly above Ternate's urban center, where over 100,000 people live within range of pyroclastic flows and volcanic bombing that have repeatedly damaged the city throughout its history as a major spice trading center. Yet the same volcanic activity that threatens urban destruction also creates the soil conditions that make Ternate's spice cultivation extraordinarily productive and valuable in international markets that continue driving economic development despite obvious geological risks. Historical eruptions of Gamalama have destroyed Ternate's spice plantations, trading facilities, and urban infrastructure. Multiple times throughout the centuries, when European colonial powers competed violently for control of the world's only source of nutmeg and cloves. Yet each destruction was followed by rebuilding and expansion as the immense profits from spice trading outweighed even catastrophic volcanic losses that would bankrupt most other commercial enterprises. Traditional Ternate spice cultivation techniques incorporate volcanic cycles into agricultural planning and crop management that maximizes productivity during dormant periods, while minimizing losses during active volcanic phases, demonstrating sophisticated understanding of volcanic soil chemistry and eruption patterns that enabled sustained agricultural success despite periodic geological disruption that would destroy less adapted farming systems. Modern Ternate continues depending on spice agriculture and processing, while also developing tourism based on the island's dramatic volcanic landscapes and historical significance as a spice trading center, creating economic diversification that reduces dependence on any single industry while maintaining the agricultural and commercial activities that have sustained island communities for centuries despite ongoing volcanic threats. Mount Nyamuragira area, located in Congo. Africa's most active volcano creates ongoing lava flows and explosive eruptions in a region where armed conflicts, extreme poverty, and geological violence combine to create some of Earth's most challenging living conditions. Yet local communities continue inhabiting areas where volcanic destruction compounds the political and economic instability that characterizes much of the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Mount Nyamuragira represents humanity's most extreme example of surviving multiple simultaneous, catastrophic threats. Nyamuragira's frequent eruptions occur in a region where armed groups, refugee populations, and displaced communities already struggle with humanitarian crises that would overwhelm most societies even without additional volcanic threats, creating survival challenges that require adaptation to both human violence and geological destruction simultaneously. Local communities must prepare for volcanic evacuation while also protecting themselves from armed conflicts and economic disruption. Traditional survival strategies in the Mount Nyamuragira region incorporate both conflict avoidance and volcanic risk management into community planning and resource allocation that enables survival despite multiple overlapping threats that would devastate less resilient populations, demonstrating remarkable human adaptability and community cooperation under extraordinary pressure from both human and geological sources of danger and instability. Agricultural systems around Mount Nyamuragira take advantage of fertile volcanic soil while adapting to periodic destruction from lava flows and ashfall that can eliminate crops and require community relocation. Yet the productivity of volcanic agriculture provides essential food security for populations who face ongoing threats to their survival from armed conflicts and economic instability that make alternative livelihood strategies difficult or impossible to develop. Mount Sinabung villages, located in Indonesia. Pyroclastic flows race down mountain slopes, while traditional Karo Batak villages maintain agricultural and cultural practices directly in the path of Indonesia's most recently awakened stratovolcano, whose 2010 reawakening after 400 years of dormancy caught communities completely unprepared for explosive eruptions that have killed dozens of people and displaced thousands more from ancestral lands. Mount Sinabung represents the challenges of adapting to suddenly increased volcanic activity. The reactivation of Mount Sinabung transformed peaceful agricultural communities into volcanic disaster zones virtually overnight, as residents who had lived their entire lives on a quiet mountain suddenly faced pyroclastic flows, volcanic bombing, and ashfall that destroyed homes, crops, and community infrastructure, while forcing evacuations from villages that had been considered safe for centuries. This sudden transition from dormancy to explosive activity demonstrates the unpredictable nature of volcanic reactivation. Traditional Karo Batak agriculture around Mount Sinabung had adapted to fertile volcanic soil without preparing for active volcanic threats, because the mountain had been dormant for so long that local cultural memory contained no knowledge of volcanic survival strategies, forcing communities to rapidly develop new risk management practices while grieving losses and adapting to dramatically changed environmental conditions that challenge traditional ways of life. Government efforts to permanently relocate Mount Sinabung communities to safer areas have met resistance from residents who prefer to remain near their ancestral lands and traditional agricultural areas despite ongoing volcanic threats, creating tension between official safety policies and community desires to maintain cultural connections to place even when those places have become demonstrably dangerous. Drop your thoughts in the comments below about which volcano village left you most amazed by human courage and adaptability. Smash that subscribe button if you want to explore more incredible examples of humans thriving in impossible places. Hit the bell icon for notifications about new adventures into the extraordinary, and share this with anyone who needs to know that some people choose to dance with danger rather than hide from it.